You do this incredible thing where you tried a bunch of different programming languages when you stream. You have like you go all out on certain programming languages like Rust and then Go and then try to pick a new one, but also are like experimenting constantly. So maybe one question I can ask is about learning. What's your approach to learning a new programming language? And maybe what's your advice on learning a new programming language when you begin that journey?
So I've kind of done a bunch of different ways to go through this learning process, and I've tried a lot of different ones. Something that is obviously successful is just start building something. Just put your hands on the keyboard. Like, especially if you already know how to program, you're like, okay, I'm now using Zig. How do I do a main function so I can just run the program? Okay, I now know how to build. Okay, how do I do an if statement? What does it look like? Okay, how do I declare my own functions? How do I do modules, right? You just kind of like Google your way through it, if you will, to get to the end product and build something. It's a great way to do things because I find that repetition, like rote learning, is obviously the best way to do this. You have to kind of go over it a bunch, and you can definitely get out and build a lot of stuff with that. And I like that initial kind of get used to things, but on top of it, I find that by doing that, you also fall into like traps. You kind of Google and you try to solve a problem in the language based on all of your previous experience, and so you don't have what makes that language special. You kind of have what all the other languages make special. And so you end up kind of not really being able to use it very effectively, but you can certainly kind of learn it and get kind of good at it. And so the second approach I've been doing lately, and this has been inspired by the creator of Ghosty, Mitchell Hashimoto, is to just start by reading the language reference, the whole thing. And so lately I've been just kind of going through and just reading the entire manual for these languages. Like Zig, I'm almost done with that one. It's like 8 to 10 hours of just sitting down reading, and I'll whip out my computer and kind of practice a couple of the things from the actual docs. And that way I can learn all the things. So then when I start building again, I remember, okay, I know there's a thing over here. Let me go reread about it because now I have it indexed in my brain somewhere that it will kind of remember. And so I don't think there's like a right or wrong way. I mean, at the end of the day, the right way is always that you have to build something eventually. You cannot just read about it. You have to put your hands on the keyboard. You have to build something out. And then once you do that, that's where you really discover what makes it painful or what makes it great. And if you don't have the breadth of what the language offers, you just may make it painful by simply being bad at it.
What exactly are you reading? Like this, like what
language reference?
The language reference.
So it just goes through like every feature top to bottom, right?
Yeah.
And every way it's described, all the different things. Like I think Zig's is, it's a decent size, but it's not just simply read the words. You want to internalize each concept as well. So it takes a long time. So I'm a slow reader.
So you're like building in AI terms like a background model, like of just because I don't think you can just start building once you're done reading because you probably forgot.
Yeah.
How to do a for loop. Like you kind of forget the specifics. You just are building up the design choices, the set of features available, what are the strengths and weaknesses, all that kind of stuff. And then you start building. That's really interesting. Probably not the thing you would recommend to a junior developer, somebody who's just starting out at first.
If you don't know what an if statement is, that's not a good way to learn. Like to me, the best way to learn then is really hands on the keyboard and building extremely simple things and slowly growing in complexity. Because understanding what a class and methods and instances versus the blueprint, which is the class, versus functions versus modules versus all that stuff, right? Like that just takes time to learn. And so that's a completely different style of learning.
I wonder, because for me, learning right now, AI is a huge help, but I already have a lot of experience. I wonder if you're starting from scratch, whether that's a good idea, but I still think it's probably a really good idea. But basically, generate some code using AI and figure out what it's doing by playing with different parts. Maybe can you comment on that aspect, like the use of AI as part of the learning process?
This is where I have both the hopeful and the doomer take at the exact same time.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing with Google or Stack Overflow. Like this, it's all the same kind of take, which is it's just making things more democratized in some sense. I get to ask questions in probably the most personal possible way with my own voice and my own words, and it's able to produce out answers and kind of hopefully help guide me. Now, regardless of just say the errors and the incorrectnesses of it, like ultimately just using it as a learning, tool and being able to just formulate and read answers in your own voice, I think is super powerful. And I think it's super amazing. But the part that I think is going to be really difficult is that we don't value remembering things anymore as a society. Like, since the internet came about, I can just look that up. No need to, you don't need to memorize your times tables, right? You can just use a calculator. You can just do all that. I remember I just was sitting on the airplane and I watched someone do the world's most simple addition and subtraction 10 times on their phone. I'm like, why are you not just you should already know these, you should be able to do these things. And I realized that we kind of offload our brains, right? Oh, I don't need to know these things because I can look them up. And that's not a bad answer in some sense. I can understand that. I don't need to remember every last thing. But then it also makes me realize that you kind of develop this learned helplessness, that a new error comes up. I'll just ask the AI. AI says, oh, okay, I got to fix this line. I fixed the line. You didn't actually learn anything. You kind of just used it as a quick means to get something out and move on. And so you sacrifice knowledge for speed, which is a great thing in some, we have to make those trade-offs all the time in engineering. Sometimes you have to move fast at the sacrifice of knowledge, and I'm totally on board for that. But I worry that what we'll create is an entire generation of incompetent programmers who can do some amount of things well, but anything that is unique, bespoke, or requires some extra little elbow grease might become very difficult. It might cause a whole chasm where juniors remain juniors forever. Mm-hmm. And I don't want to see that. I want to see people grow. I want to see people, actually be able to take this as a craftsmanship thing. And so that's kind of that's both my hope and my worry is that AI, I think, can do both, really. Because if you could ask whatever question you want and you don't have to rely on, say, a book to give you that exact answer, and if the book just said it wrong and you can't understand it, it's just sorry, you don't get to learn what this is. Like recursion for me. I spent way too much time until someone gave me the right problem to understand recursion. You could imagine AI could have solved that for me way faster because it could have gave me the right problem and walked me through it much better. But what happened if I just always have recursion solved by them and not actually learn it myself?
So if I ask AI to generate code to do a certain thing, some actually large percentage of time, most of what AI generates is going to be correct for me. But some percent of the time, it's not, fundamentally not. Mm-hmm. And for me to recognize the difference between those two, I think it takes a lot of experience. I think to learn that skill of knowing, no, a different, new, out-of-the-box solution is needed here than the one you're providing. You're missing the point. That's a skill. And how do you learn that? You learn that by building from scratch. So both are probably really necessary.
Yeah.
But I think as a first step of learning how to program, it's pretty nice to generate a function, to generate for loops and all that kind of stuff, and then just fuck with the different lines and modify them to try to adjust the behavior of the program. And from the way the behavior of the program adjusts, or if bugs are created, you learn about the syntax of the language, the behavior of the language, all that kind of stuff. So I think it's a super powerful way to learn. But yeah, you need to also write from scratch.
Yeah, at some point you have to take off the training wheels, because I think what you're really spotting is the difference between reading and writing code. I can read a lot of languages very well. I can see what's happening. I can understand it. But I would not be very good at writing it. I can understand a lot of things about C++ and I can read it, but I'm just not that, because I haven't done it in so long. I can't remember where all the semicolons and colons and you do public and private and how should you do naming convention, all those things kind of add all together. And then you're just oh, I'm really bad at writing it, though I can read it. And so there's a skill gap chasm that exists between those two.